Hi, everybody. We're meeting with Michelle-Boone. And Michelle is the fabulous one-year director. She's been the director, the commissioner for 1 year of the Department of Cultural Affairs in Chicago, which includes public art and art exhibitions and music and dance and theater, all these things that, are in the public realm as opposed to private theater and art galleries and things like that. And, I don't know if you remember, Michelle, but you and I met because you used to work for the Joyce Foundation, which gave away money to arts activities. And you invited me to come to an awards dinner or banquet, and I said I couldn't come. How about we go out to lunch? And, you didn't know who I was, and I didn't know who you were, and we hit it off. And now you're famous. So, I guess the point that I'm making for all you all out there and artists is that, you never know who's going to be cool, fabulous, and, rise right by you. It's a good idea to be nice to everybody. Hi, Michelle. Do you remember that event? Do you remember how that happened?
I do. We used to fund an artist awards program called the Joyce Awards. And I invited you, and yeah, we had a good lunch.
Yeah, I don't remember where we went, but I remember, wasn't it in the basement somewhere?
Victoria 10.
Yeah, good to go. Good memory. All right, so you are immersed in the arts, and we just were speaking with somebody else. But now, a lot of people when they're kids or young, feel like they have no choice but to be artists. My recollection is that you didn't want to grow up to be an artist, or that you weren't what's the word I'm like, a visual artist or a woman making art when you were a kid. Is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't. I guess I recognized early on that I didn't have any talent. But I love the arts, and so I always knew I wanted to work around artists and to find a way to do something where I could support people who were creative. So, I wasn't an art maker, but I always immersed myself in, doing lighting for the theater productions or videotaping performances for the band and, other artists. So I've always been involved and connected with arts and entertainment, even though, I knew I couldn't do my own art making.
So how did you end up at the Joyce Foundation?
Oh, God, that's a long story. Well, back on this track about wanting to be around artists, my initial background was more in entertainment. I worked for a number of years in television as a television engineer. Used to do sound and lighting and camera and graphic design for all three of the major networks here in Chicago. Actually worked on the launch of the Oprah Winfrey Show. And from there, I did some freelance work in film. I ended up in the record business, working as in sales and record promotion. Made #1 hits happen in the Midwest. I then went to the Peace Corps, had a stint the Peace Corps volunteer in Chad, Africa, and came back from that with a lot more focus. And so I wanted to make a shift from entertainment to really working more in arts administration. And worked for a little while at the Art Institute of Chicago in development, working in corporate and foundation relations. And ironically, I had a short stint here at the Department of Cultural Affairs working with the Youth Arts Program. And it was from that work that I got on the radar for the Joyce Foundation. This Youth Arts Program partnered with lots of arts organizations across the city. So I was known among the community. And when they were looking for someone to take over their arts programming, a lot of people had enough respect for me to recommend me to the foundation president. And I was there for almost 8 years.
So Chicago has a new mayor as of about, I don't know if he's still new, but as of about a year ago. And the previous person who was commissioner of public art was in that position for a really long time. So that, a lot of things I think were ingrained. Did you apply for this job, or were you solicited? Was it competitive? Is it something you knew you really wanted, or is it something you needed to be talked into? That's a whole lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of questions. It was highly competitive, and it was not a position that I wanted. Actually, there were a number of my friends and colleagues who were very aggressively trying to secure the position, and I was approached about 3 times to come in and interview for the job, and I turned it down just because I knew that, well, for one, I was really happy at the Joyce Foundation. I loved my work there. I really felt good about the way that I was able to make a difference. So it was great. I was happy. I wasn't really looking for anything. I think what intrigued me about it was the opportunity to come in and really put a new mark on the department. As you said, the person that had been in this role before had been here for over 2 decades. That's a long time for a city agency to just have one voice. So while it does have its challenges, it's been exciting. It's exciting to come on board at a time with a new mayor, new administration. There's lots of really good energy. So, you know, why not? Here I am.
So, you know, I mean, given that someone was here previously for like decades, you know, it's sort of been appropriate to redefine the position. And, you know, I think there's so many trade-offs. So you're redefining things. Tell me, in a nutshell, what you're doing.
Well, some of the things were actually redefined before I walked in the door. So the Department of Cultural Affairs, prior to Mayor Emanuel, was joined and merged with the Mayor's Office of Special Events. So you had this one agency that had traditionally been responsible for, quote unquote, the fine arts, merged with another agency that was responsible for many of the large-scale festivals that happen throughout the city. So I've been trying to really shepherd what that whole merger looks like and redefine what a new program is. I also am trying to approach the job where this department traditionally pushed out over 2,000 programs, services, and events annually. That's a lot of work. And so how do I find the right balance between repositioning the department so that we are not the ones responsible for producing all that work, but really make us more of a collaborator with other arts organizations, and then provide the opportunity for the arts community to have access to many of our venues and present their own work to downtown audiences. And I think that'll be the biggest shift.
All right, let's shift gears. I'm using the same word. Let's shift gears here a bit, because everybody in this group that we're speaking with are visual artists. What do you think a city government's responsibility is to its visual artists?
Well, I think we have a really robust visual arts program. We do anywhere from 6 to 10 major exhibitions in our spaces. Many of those spaces are dedicated to Chicago artists. So it's showcasing the work of local artists. But then also, I think, which is really cool, because our venues are public venues and free, we're in a position to make accessible to people you know, kind of some of the top talent, some of the top tier shows that might be touring nationally, and to have access to seeing those works for free. So I think the balance is finding ways to showcase local artists, finding opportunities to present nationally known shows and artists as well. But then also, we have a number of services that we do to support individual artists. So things like the Chicago Artist Resource website, CAR, you know, where you can log on to this free service and find out, you know, where's cheap studio space, what might be opportunities for collaboration, where are, you know, how do I get my taxes done? Just really basic kinds of things. So we're still trying to redefine it. We brought some new people on, people that are well connected to the community. You know, you and I have had a number of conversations about how we might rethink and revamp the visual arts department and really make it more connected to the visual arts community.
What kind has your view of art changed and artists changed between being at the Joyce Foundation and working for the city of Chicago?
Not really. You know, we had that same program that I had invited you to. I was really exposed to so many wonderful artists because we actually gave awards for institutions to commission new work by artists, and one of the categories was visual art. So I had an opportunity to learn not just about Chicago artists, but artists that were doing really dynamic things throughout the Midwest. So we supported the presentation of works in Chicago, Milwaukee, the Twin Cities, Cleveland, Detroit, and Indianapolis. So having an opportunity to go to some of these museums and meet members of the visual arts community at the local level in those cities, but also people who are trying to do big things. You know, the first time I learned about Julie Moretti was through the Joyce Awards. So it's been, that was a real big eye-opening experience, and I think that all, really prepared me for what I'm walking into now.
I get the sense, I wrote an article about it last week, about more and more artists are taking on bigger social, societal kinds of issues. I think you support that, an artist who are engaged in their community, right?
Right.
And do you see that same kind of trend happening? Do you see that happening more? Or maybe you saw it more than I did at the Joyce Foundation because you were more immersed in it than I am.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just went to a performance this past weekend at the Museum of Contemporary Art with, it was a collaboration between Martin Luther Joseph, who is pretty much a performance artist, with someone who's become kind of a renaissance man of an artist, Theaster Gates. So Theaster is also a visual artist. Theaster created the set for this performance piece, but also was on stage as a performer. And the work was really grounded around, the entire performance piece was about connecting people of color with environmental issues. And they talked about how they go into a community to really build the next work. But one of the things I found with the work that I did at the Joyce Foundation was that there's also this burden on the artist and not so much on the institution about, kind of community outreach. And a lot of artists are, particularly visual artists, they communicate through their work. They're not necessarily people or, people. They don't communicate verbally. And so in some instances, it can be really uncomfortable to be forced into that situation where, in order to get the next big show, now you also have the burden of doing, the outreach for the institution, developing an education program, and helping the institution do its own audience development work. So I think it's a really unique thing that's happening right now. And sometimes that is really more the burden of artists of color, because many of these institutions are trying to get more diverse audiences.
Yeah, I saw Theaster that Saturday night at the Hyde Park Arts Center after he was at the MCA. He did get around. Let's talk about funding for artists who are engaged in making community-conscious art, because a lot of things that, various artists do are not particularly saleable per se. So what's the model? How do these people how do they support themselves?
Well, I guess primarily, it's hard. Doing that kind of community work, you really need to be associated with some type of nonprofit, because most foundations aren't set up to give grants to individuals. So you need some kind of vehicle to be a receiver of any grant funds for that outreach work. I think so. If you're doing community outreach, you're not limited just to arts funders, but if you're involved in things that are really about art and social change, like for example, the example that I just gave about Martin Luther Joseph, he was able to tap into funding through the performance vehicle, but also through agencies that are interested in advancing environmental issues.
Okay. And what about grants? I mean, people didn't apply to the Joyce Foundation for grants per se, or to the Department of Cultural Affairs, right? I mean...
Right. Well, the Department of Cultural Affairs does give grants, does award grants to individual artists. However, the Joyce Foundation did not. Most foundations are set up to give grants to 501c3 nonprofits. So the artist would have to partner with an institution, and then the institution would submit the application on their behalf.
and then the project happens or it doesn't happen? What's the time warp? How long does it take from the time somebody applies for one of those kinds of things till the time money gets gifted?
Well, we gave a 3-year window for the project to be completed. So sometimes they happen really quickly, but in other instances, things like commissioning a new theater work might take a little longer for an artist to write a script versus someone doing an art project. And then also, because we were working with museums, the calendars for exhibitions is really far out. So at a minimum, they had 3 years, but there have been some instances where projects would take up to 5 years to complete. And while we wouldn't specify the exact amount that the artist would receive as a part of that grant, they would have to, in their proposal, identify how much of the grant funds would be going to the artist. And the expectation was that a significant percentage of the overall budget would be devoted to the artist.
I want to open this up to some questions from the folks out, who are listening in tonight. But do you feel, in a moment, so think about questions, you guys. And Monica, we'll start with you. Do you feel like the role of the visual artist is changing? That there's, I feel like visual artists are being more socially responsible than they used to. But I don't know if that's a momentary thing, because of the nature of the economy and the divisive politics in the United States, or if that's just happening on a broader spectrum. You have a thought?
No, I think, visual artists are always in a position to respond to what's happening politically or what's, kind of current. They're, I think, best able to be the most nimble in responding to things around them. And so maybe that's why we are able to see it so immediately from them. I think musicians and visual artists probably a lot faster than like the performing artists are able to really respond and then get the work right out there.
Okay, cool. Monica, I'm getting over here to call on you. Go ahead, Monica.
I read with great interest, Michelle, an interview that you had given some time ago. And it became very clear to me that one of your great loves is gospel singing.
Wait a minute, be a little louder. What's one of her great interests?
Gospel singing.
Okay, I thought you said basketball. That's entirely different.
And yeah, I'm sorry, because one of the things I did notice was there wasn't a whole lot of talk about visual artists. But I do know that, as an institution, this is a large part of your activities. But maybe you can tell us more about the gospel singing.
About, sorry?
Gospel singing.
Oh.
Monica, what do you want to know about gospel, Monica?
Well, it sounded like it hadn't been surfacing very much in Chicago. And there is an effort underway to have it both downtown and also on the south side to reawaken that interest.
Yeah, so the Gospel Music Festival is a program that has been done in the city for a while, for years. For the first time, though, what's unique about the festival this year is that we're taking it back into the neighborhood where gospel music originated. Gospel music actually was born in Chicago, in Bronzeville. So we have expanded the festival to really celebrate this cultural legacy of Chicago with a 4-day music festival. We'll start it downtown, open it in Millennium Park. The following day, have programming here in the Cultural Center. And then that Saturday and Sunday, the festival will be anchored in Bronzeville, right near the churches where gospel was born. And so we're going to do really cool things like have an architecture trolley tour to visit some of these historic churches where this music started. They're really great, magnificent buildings. So just as an architecture experience alone, they have a lot of history, but to also learn about, who are the pioneers of the music form. So we want to make it more than just, going to the park to hear the music, but to really provide this opportunity to learn about this cultural heritage in the city.
Thank you. That answers a lot of my interests there. I suppose I should also ask about, with the encouragement, I'm noticing that we have now so very many very talented artists of color in Chicago, and I would like to see a greater focus even than what has already been given. Is that in the picture?
Well, we want to, make sure that we're serving all of our artists. I think the local institutions are doing a good job of that right now. The Museum of Contemporary Art has a show up by one of Paul's favorite artists, Rashid Johnson.
I thought that show was really, really good. I had to go tell Rashid I was really impressed.
Rashid Johnson is up at the Museum of Contemporary Art. There will be 2 institutions shortly that will be showcasing the work of local photographer Dawood Bey at the Art Institute and also at the Renaissance Society. So I think the city as a whole is doing a lot to really help increase the visibility of artists of color.
Thanks, Michelle.
Cool, let's take a different question. Monica, those were good, thank you. Hold on. Patricia, I saw somebody before you. I thought it was Pat. No, it was you. I thought it was Patrick. Okay, Patricia, go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you great. Everything's wonderful.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm in Atlanta, so I'm not at home tonight. But
we're not taking it personally.
Thanks. Michelle, I just want to thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. I know how busy you must be. And I want to tell you that I'm very excited about the 2012 Chicago Cultural Plan.
Yay!
I'm actually curating a program for Maya Paywar's office. I'm the curator for, it's an open wall project. And what we do is we have 6.
Uh-oh, you just froze, Patricia. You said, oh, there you go. You're back. Go ahead.
It's sprung up because he basically he gave us the walls in his office just to use as we wanted to. And I'm hoping that maybe you or someone from your office can come to one of the exhibits to experience it. What I'm envisioning here, because I've been approached by folks from other wards, is creating something like a cookbook or a handbook of sorts that just could be turned over to different wards so that they could just quickly create what we've been able to create here. Because one of the things that I've heard at the different Chicago cultural plans is that people really wanted to create something in their own community. And I think what we've got here is pretty magical. And what the committee would like to do is offer it over to anyone who wanted to emulate it.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So
did you get that she's working in Alderman Amaya Pawar's office?
Yes.
Okay. How many Chicago aldermen give a damn about art? I'm sorry, that's not a very politically proper question.
I'm surprised. We finished up about 30 community meetings, and I would say at least 25, the aldermen were in attendance.
That's impressive. Okay, but go ahead and answer the question.
Well, I think they're all interested. I think they all recognize the value and the potential that art, and particularly arts organizations, have and can have to stimulate community development, economic development in their neighborhoods. I think they all have watched with interest what has happened in the transformation of some neighborhoods across the city. And I think particularly the aldermen that have very limited cultural assets in their wards and in their neighborhoods are eager to see if this cultural plan will be able to deliver some new opportunities for their residents.
That would be cool. All right. Anybody else have questions? I don't see a whole lot. Joyce has a question. Joyce, your turn.
I was wondering who's in charge of Chicago Public Commissions now?
Chicago, I don't know what do you mean, the public commission?
Well, I mean, Lee Kelly used to be in charge of commissioning artists for I don't know, aqueducts.
Oh, public art.
Public art,
So
yeah.
we just hired recently a gentleman, Daniel Schulman, who is
Oh, good. Danny's awesome.
from the Art Institute. So Daniel Schulman will be over our visual arts division.
Oh, he's a fabulous human being. What a pleasure.
And
Oh, good.
how would
He's
one,
awesome. I love him. I'm sorry, Joyce. Go ahead.
how would one reach him, and would he be amenable to emails, or what is the best way?
Yeah, he just started last week, so forgive me if his email system is not up yet, but in the future, his email address should be Daniel, D-A-N-I-E-L, .Schulman, S-C-H-U-L-M-A-N, @cityofchicago.org.
Thank you.
Yeah, Danny curated a fabulous show at the Terra Museum, Jesus, maybe 12 years ago, and he was a curator at the Art Institute. Huh?
Yeah, that great show at the Curtis about the Rosenwald Connect.
Yeah, the Rosenwald. That was beautiful, and he's a beautiful writer, and he's one of those people who has a smile that just makes you feel good. You know, he's a great guy. I'm excited to know that. Cool. Monica, did you have another question?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay, cool. Anybody else have a question of Michelle? This is it, man. You got your government officials sitting right here, being responsible and everything else. And what? I heard somebody's hand go up. Was it Patricia? Did you have another comment? Here. Wait a minute. We've got Mike Halbing's jumping up and down. Mike, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I figured I might as well try this. Are you open to emails with suggestions and proposals about art projects?
Of course. So if anybody has any questions, if you don't want to ask today, or if you think of something later, by all means, feel free to email me. My email address is Michelle, M-I-C-H-E-L-L-E, .Boone, B-O-O-N-E, @cityofchicago.org.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She only puts in 14-hour days, you know, so.
That's pretty normal for all of us.
Okay, Michelle, no sympathy for here.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's cool. All right, well, good. Karen, go ahead.
Michelle, I don't know, this is kind of random. I was kind of sad to see the Artomat disappear at the Cultural Center with the gift shop. I was hoping that that would expand and be around the whole city. Do you have any info on that, and what do you think?
Wait a minute. Let me explain. Wait, Michelle, let me explain what the Artomat was. The Artomat was an old cigarette machine that had artwork in it about the size of a cigarette pack. And wait a minute, I'm going to get one. I bought something.
Sorry, I didn't know you didn't know what that was. I thought it was part of the
No, I know what it is. I think he was explaining it for the rest of the
Oh, okay.
I know Michelle knows. Here's something I bought, you know, styrogami. I thought that was really cool. What happened, Michelle?
So we just, with this whole new merger, in the past, the department had the benefit of partnering with some nonprofit organizations that were able to contract artists, accept the revenues, and really manage that Artomat. And now we are looking to do all of our programming strictly through city funds. So we just have to identify a new vendor to take it over. But yeah, I love the Artomat. Those are really cool, and I think you're right. They would be cool to see them all over the city.
Great, thank you.
That'd be really fun. Thanks, Karen. Let me see if anybody else had a question. Sam, go ahead, Sam.
Hi, Michelle. I just have a question. I was talking to our alderman down here in the 4th Ward. I live in Bronzeville, and he asked me about how to develop the area down here. And I couldn't get artists to live down in different areas. And I know in the different neighborhoods that I lived in, whether it's Wicker Park or Bridgeport and now Bronzeville, that there has been kind of a transformation in those neighborhoods, not because of me, but just because of things in general. But I was wondering if your department has anything to do with that, with the ability of inviting artists or encouraging them to move into different parts of the city in order to in essence, to do what Theaster did down in Woodlawn. I mean, he has begun to transform that neighborhood.
Is that Alderman Will Burns?
No, it Burns.
Uh-huh.
Will Burns. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he's working to try and get some zoning approved to create a whole artist live workspace, working in collaboration with Alderman Dow.
Right.
So our department can't do anything about changing some of the zoning, but what we can do is once aldermen or developers identify spaces where they want this kind of activity to happen, we actually have a cultural planning division under our department. And so then we work in tandem with the zoning department, with the Department of Housing and Economic Development to kind of make sure that these projects get shepherded along and happen. So I'm aware of what Alderman Burns is trying to do. In fact, I think he has a proposal out to some developers now that will then submit the application to Department of Housing and Economic Development. So yeah, I think there's a lot of movement happening there.
Great, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Are all the layers of city government slowing down the process compared to how it was for you when you were working at the Joyce Foundation?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sharon, go ahead. Your turn. Go ahead.
Hi, Michelle. I have a couple questions. In October, the International Sculpture Conference is taking place in Chicago, and I think October is also Chicago's Artist Month.
Right.
And I was wondering if you had any ideas or suggestions about how artists can get involved in that.
I did meet with the people from the International Sculpture Organization about that. I believe they'll be in conversations with staff soon to try and figure that out. I know that as a part of what was Art Chicago, they used to do that whole sculpture installation. So I don't know if they'll try and reposition that later in the month as a part of Chicago Artist Month. You know, SOFA, I think, also happens in October, so there might be an opportunity to try and, you know, book in something around that time. But we have been in conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. That's a good thing. Let's see. Jerry, your turn. Go ahead.
Hey, Michelle, thanks for meeting with us. The department that you run, do the services that you provide and the connections with various funding sources, are they also open to people who don't live in the city of Chicago?
Oh, good question.
Well, they may be open to people who don't live in the city, but the work would have to happen here.
So the work would have to be done in Chicago.
Right.
Well, I mean, when you say done in the city,
So
does that mean?
You might be an artist that lives in Montana, but
well, not that far away, no.
Do an exhibition. You want to have funding to support an exhibition in one of our spaces that would run in Chicago. Then yes, it wouldn't be limited to just Chicago-based artists, but the actual presentation of the work would have to happen here.
Okay. So it can be made anywhere as long as it's shown in Chicago.
Right. Yeah. In fact, we have works on display by artists from all over the world.
Okay.
You know, and the city of Chicago has a large, you know, there's a percent for art program where for government buildings, city government buildings, which recently has made mostly police stations, and you know, the Department of Cultural Affairs puts somewhere in the neighborhood of 50%. It's an interesting question. 50% of the money and 50% of the art is from artists who are not, you know, Chicago-based artists. And there are also times where you have things like the public transportation, the Chicago Transit Authority, essentially commission or work with the Department of Cultural Affairs to have them select the art for new L stations and things like that. Who has a question? I hear hands going up, but I don't see who it is. Can somebody unmute themselves if they have a question and ask it? I hear people mumbling, but I don't hear anybody asking questions. There we go. Those sound like hands.
Hi, Michelle.
Go ahead.
This is Ilasa. I am wondering how you decide what projects are important, and how do you get the word out to artists?
Visual art projects?
Yes, visual art.
Well, there's a visual arts committee. I mean, there's a staff. There's a full staff of curators and a director now for the visual arts department. And there is a visual arts committee that will review the proposed applications submitted by artists, and they then make the decision. So the committee consists of people from, externally. They're not all city employees. They're representatives from some of the art schools. They include artists, professional people that would have a knowledge and an ability to kind of assess the value of the projects proposed. They look at, what has been done in the past, how it relates to what else is slated on the calendar, what else might be happening throughout the city. It's a whole curation process.
That's a good point that Michelle makes, though, about people applying for things, is that it isn't always based solely on, how wonderful or not wonderful your art is. It's often based on, the timing of other things that are going on, how it fits into a bigger picture, and what the relationships are, etc. I think I told the story about when I curated the art or selected the art from McCormick Place. I showed them 30-something artists' work for 30 positions there. And one of them was an artist named Ai Kojima. I think I told the story, who makes really big, wonderful quilts that hang on the wall from found materials and like Disney images and Laurel and Hardy and other stuff like that, Hanna-Barbera. And they looked at her stuff and said, no, we don't want it. I said, that's why. She's fabulous. You should definitely have her art. And they said, no, we don't want it because she's got Disney imagery in it. And Orlando is our biggest competitor, and when anybody's here, we don't want them thinking about Orlando. So I made a big point of telling her, because, you guys keep saying that, artists keep saying, and you guys included that, you got a rejection letter. And I don't really see it as a rejection letter. I see it as your work isn't appropriate for us at this moment kind of a letter. And, there are other issues besides how cool your art is that people need to consider when they're trying to figure out what to do with your art. So, don't take it personally, is I think the moral of the story. Deirdre, it's your turn. Please ask your question.
Hi, Michelle, thank you for talking to us. Can you tell us how much in advance the shows are slotted for the spaces at the Cultural Center?
Well, I think right now we have exhibitions in most of the galleries. I think, we have, maybe about 8 different gallery spaces. The main galleries might be booked through the end of 2013. And that's only because we're only doing maybe 3 shows a year. But some of the other spaces, those are kind of less open to be responsive to kind of special opportunities that might come up. So as far as I know, our calendar now for the main galleries is booked through the fall of next year.
Okay, thank you.
No, but also, Deirdre, that doesn't necessarily mean you should slow down, because all the time there are artists who call up and go, my show's scheduled for July, but I have a problem, and, I had a kiln accident, and the work is all destroyed, and I can't maintain my commitment to the exhibit. I would have to say that probably happened to me when I had a gallery, once a year. And all of a sudden, you'd go looking for someone who has a whole body of work that's interesting and exciting that you want to work with and show it. And sometimes that's just a one-shot deal, and sometimes it grows into a major, in a major exhibit. I'm pretty sure, oh my God, there was a recent exhibit, I can't remember, Michelle, at the Museum of Contemporary Art, when I asked the question, how long ago was this show planned? And they said 4 months. And that's highly unusual, but it happens enough that, you should let it be known that you're the one who's ready.
Okay.
Joyce, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering who is in charge of the exhibitions at the Cultural Center now.
Oh, more good news. Go ahead, Michelle.
Daniel Schulman.
Oh, okay.
Danny, what about Lanny? What's he doing?
Oh, and Lanny Silverman is back. Lanny's a curator. So Lanny Silverman, who was a longtime curator for the department, is back as a part of the team. Two people who had been disconnected from the department are back. Lanny Silverman and then Greg Lunsford.
Oh, cool. I like them both. This is good. Yeah. Michelle, you're doing a great job. You're hiring my friends. All right. Anybody else? So Michelle, before you let yourself go, it sounds like we're on the right floor on the elevator or something here all of a sudden. I don't see who that is that has a question. Does somebody want to unmute themselves and ask the question? Is that Monica again? Monica, go ahead.
Yes.
No, you muted yourself, Monica. I've unmuted you. Proceed.
Oh, okay. Hang on, I gotta find my question. Two different questions, not at all related to each other. How do you define your relationship with the Illinois Arts Council, Michelle? And are there monies trading back and forth? And also, what is your opinion on the work-live housing for artists, and how can the Cultural Center be supportive of that effort?
Oh, those are good questions. Cool. I'm going to mute you so Michelle can proceed. I got the questions. Michelle, go ahead.
So the relationship between the Illinois Arts Council is that we just partner when we can. Actually, the Arts Council awards a grant to this department specifically for individual artists. That's where that funding stream comes from. We don't give money to the state, but the state will award grants to us to support individual artists. How can we help advance the live-work issue for artists? I'm hoping that that will be a strategy, a real important strategy as a part of the new cultural plan. So I haven't talked much about that, but in February we launched the process to develop a new cultural plan for the city of Chicago. It's the first time the city has had a plan in over 25 years. They haven't had one since 1986. So we're looking at some key issues, things like, arts education and establishing cultural hubs in districts, and also how to support the sector, but also ways that the city can develop policies to really be more supportive to individual artists. So we recognize that we have a number of really magnificent art schools here in the city. We're churning out thousands of creative degrees, but we don't really have the infrastructure in place to be that supportive so that those people, those young people, can stay here and be employed in our city. So that creative talent is leaving. So we have to do a better job about making sure that artists are able to earn a living wage, that they can have affordable housing. And so I think this Artist Live Workspace initiative will really speak to that.
Let's wrap this up with this question. What's the role of the government leading, the court, sociological jurisprudence, and what's the role of, is there a balance between you leading the art interests? I got more than one question. A balance between that and being attentive to the needs of artists and following their lead. Who's leading? Is it back and forth? Is it like...
For the cultural plan perspective, it's the people that are leading the process. We've engaged in about 30 community conversations and another additional 10 to 15 sector-specific focus group meetings, so that the plan, and this whole notion about, how do we support individual artists, this is something that came from the ground up. It's not me dictating out, this is what your cultural plan should be, but really trying to position it so that we are responding to what we heard. So that's more my approach. It's how do I position this department to be a conduit to help people access resources, not just within city government or through this department, but throughout city government. What might be the role for individual artists in helping the police address issues about public safety in their community? How can we get artists more involved as a part of the solution for young people with some of those issues? How do I make sure that the work that we're trying to do for ensuring that young people, that students have access to arts education in the schools is also embraced by the Chicago Public School District? So this is work that we can't do by ourselves. We really need to make sure that all of the city agencies, how do we make sure that public transportation or the Department of Transportation, Housing and Economic Development, arts aren't an afterthought, but really a critical piece of the big picture, the puzzle. So it's more responsive and not dictating down.
Real cool. Thank you. I don't know if we have another question or not. Hold on, let me look through this real quick. I don't know. Patricia's hand is up. Patricia, do you have a question? And as much as I can't unmute you, maybe it doesn't. There you go. Do you have a question? I'm gonna, go ahead if you do.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but not well, but go ahead. Yeah.
All right.
And now we can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I got my screen open. One of the things I was curious about was in the 2012 community meetings, everyone broke up into little groups and then reported back out. What was done with those report outs or that kind of feedback?
That's all being compiled right now into a total summary document. All of that feedback will be documented and distilled and submitted as a report. Later this early part of the summer, we'll do another series of town hall meetings that we're calling ground truthing sessions, where we will report back to the community and say, okay, here's what we heard. Did we get it right? Is this what you said? Have we captured everything? So that'll be done through some in-person meetings, but then also that document will be posted online. So people who attended the meeting can go back and look and say, hey, you really did not capture what I said accurately. Here's what, I wanted to see included in this. This is what's missing from the plan, or, hey, you guys got it right on.
Beautiful. Let's wrap this puppy up. I think it's really cool that Michelle is in charge of the whole government and that the whole world is a better place. No, I think it's great that we have a commissioner who is on the job and is there. It's not 14 hours yet. It's only 13 hours and 40 minutes. And, that she's responsive to what's going on in the community and creating a really, solid logistical plan that's responsive, that's listening and paying attention, and that she's capable of implementing change, and that she's got that fabulous warm smile that disarms everybody and, lets them know that she's going to kick their butt. It's really perfect. I think Michelle's wonderful, and I think it's really great that, we have a government official like her and that she shared all this information with us. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I'm unmuting everybody so they can echo that opinion. Thanks a ton, Michelle. Thank you.
So humanitarian.
I'm going to stop the recording, but don't you guys leave yet. All right, I'm stopping the recording.